Hello everyone, Jolene here from Bookworm Adventure Girl. Welcome back. I hope that you are all well. If you are new, thanks so much for checking out my channel. Please hit subscribe and stick around. Today I am going to be talking about 30 Canadian writers to watch for in 2023. As many of you already know, I try to read diversely and I like to highlight Canadian literature. And there is a lot of diversity within Canadian literature, which is one of the things that I love about it. I also love learning about new authors, and I'm always surprised at how many there are. So every year around this time, CBC Books puts out an article highlighting 30 Canadian writers. This year it's titled 30 Canadian Writers Making Their Mark. So I will leave a link to that article in the description box below so you can go and check it out and read that if you're interested. I will also leave a link to the video that I did last year so you can check that out as well. They're very helpful, especially if you're doing the Reading Across Canada challenge. So I'm going to go through this list with you and let you know how many authors I've read, how many authors I have on my shelf but haven't read, and then I will share the authors and books on my radar. And then I will share the authors that are new to me. So since there are 30 of these, I'm going to go through this fairly quickly as possible. And I'd love to know if you haven't read any of these authors yet, or if you were aware of any of them. All of that, I want to know about it. So in the first category, authors that I've read, this is a really easy one because I haven't read any of these authors yet. So that means two things. One, I need to get reading and really caught up on some of these authors. And then two, there are a lot of new Canadian authors to explore, and that's very exciting to me. So next are the authors that I have on my shelves, but I haven't read yet. So in this category, I do have books. I have two of the books that are on the list, and I'm very excited to get to both of them. First is Sheila Murray's Finding Edward, and this is her debut novel. Sheila was born and raised in England and now lives in Hamilton, Ontario. So I first heard about Finding Edward when it was a finalist for the Governor General's Award for fiction, and that was in 2022. And then I picked it up when it was longlisted for Canada Reads this year and was really hoping it would get shortlisted, and it didn't. So Finding Edward still sits on my shelf. But this is a novel about a man named Cyril Roundtree who discovers letters from the 1920s which tell the story of a white mother who gave up her mixed-race son for adoption. And then Cyril relates to this story and goes on a journey of personal discovery and exploration of Canada's Black history. So the second author on my shelf is Jessica Johns, who is Cree. She is a Nahio writer from Northern Alberta, and I recently picked up her debut novel, so you will see it again in my August haul video later this month, but it is Bad Cree. So this is a horror-infused novel about an Indigenous character's attempt to reconnect with their land and culture amidst terrifying nightmares. This has been getting a lot of buzz, so I'm really excited to get to it. Okay, so next up are authors or books that are on my radar, and I have 10 books in this category, and I'm going to share these in the order from the ones that are less on my radar, if that makes sense, to most on my radar. So first up is Chrysalis by Anuja Varghese. Anuja is from Hamilton, Ontario, and I first heard about her in another CBC Books article. I think Chrysalis is her debut short story collection. It examines the ways in which racialized women are undermined and exploited, and the ways in which they reclaim their power. So very good themes, and I like checking out short story collections to learn more about how an author writes and more about their style. Next up is another debut novel, Nothing Good Happens in Wazirabad on Wednesday by Jamaluddin Aram. Hopefully I said all of that right. Aram is from Afghanistan and now lives in Toronto. And this novel is a portrayal of everyday life in an Afghan neighborhood during the country's civil war in the 1990s. So this is a topic that I've read a little bit about, mostly through Khalid Hosseini, author of The Kite Runner, A Thousand Splendid Suns, and other books like that. So those are really big shoes to fill. So I look forward to seeing what this novel brings to the table. Next is Looking for Jane by Heather Marshall, who is from Toronto. And I have seen this book several times. I've seen it in the bookstores. It is Marshall's debut historical fiction novel about underground abortion access in the 1970s in Toronto. So that is some history that I know little about, and of course this is a hot topic right now. Next is author Nguyen, who was raised in Halifax and currently lives in Toronto. I first heard of her debut novel, Sunshine Nails, because of Jess at Stalking Kafka. I saw it on her posts and didn't know that it was a Canadian author, so that was exciting. So this is about a Vietnamese Canadian family who are trying to keep their family business, which is a nail salon called Sunshine Nails. So they're trying to keep this business open, and family relationships are put to the test as they work to save their nail salon. This book, every time I see it, I am captivated by the cover. Delicious Monsters by Liselle Sambury. Liselle Sambury is a Trinidadian Canadian, currently living in Toronto. This is her first horror YA novel, so if you are into YA and horror, this might be a good read for you. Delicious Monsters is an eerie story about Daisy, who sees ghosts, and another girl 10 years later piecing together a supernatural mystery. Next up is an author I've talked about before, Andre Forget. He is a Toronto-born writer, currently based in England, and I talked about him when his debut novel, which is called In the City of Pigs, was longlisted for the 2022 Giller Prize. It follows a failed musician trying his hand at journalism in Toronto. Another author that was getting some buzz last year was Saeed Teebi. He grew up in Kuwait and is currently living in Toronto. And his debut short story collection is called Her First Palestinian. It is about characters grappling with their experience as Palestinian immigrants in Canada. So this is a book that I had hoped to get to last year and didn't, so hopefully this year. Another book that I've seen a lot of people talk about, and I've seen it in the bookstores, is Hold My Girl. This is by Charlene Carr, who was raised in Toronto and now lives in Nova Scotia. Hold My Girl is a dual narrative novel about two women, Catherine and Tess, whose eggs are switched during IVF. It explores the complexities of love, motherhood, and racial identity. So this definitely has an interesting concept, and I hope to get to it soon. Okay, these next two novels, I almost bought the last time I was at the bookstore, but I know you can imagine this, I already had an armload of books, so these two had to wait this time, but I am very excited to read both of them. So first up is Camp Zero by Michelle Min Sterling, who was born in Vancouver Island in BC and now lives in Massachusetts. So this is her debut novel, and it is a dystopian thriller set in 2049, where the social order is marked by climate change and digital technology. So I will be seeing Michelle speak here in Calgary at, I think it's the beginning of September. So I don't think I'm going to be able to get to this book before then, but I might pick it up at the event, and I will let you all know how that goes. The final author in this category is one that I first heard about from Wabgishig. So I chatted with Wab last, I think it was November, after the Giller Prize, and I will leave a link to that video below. And I asked Wab for recommendations, and one of the ones he mentioned right away was In the Upper Country by Kai Thomas. So I immediately put it on my TBR, and my plan is to read this before the end of this year. So Kai was born and raised in Ottawa, and this is his debut novel. It is a fictional portrayal of mid-19th century Southern Ontario through the eyes of a young Black journalist. When a woman escaping the US through the Underground Railroad kills a slave hunter, Lucinda is enlisted to interview her from jail. So I have a feeling that this is going to be an incredible book. So those are the authors that I know at least a little about, and that leaves us with 18 new authors to me. So for these, I have put them into different categories. So I have children and YA books, poetry, short stories, and more debut novels. So there are 3 books on the list for children and YA. And first is Top Secret Anniversary by Mitali Banerjee, Ruths. I hope that's right. This is part of the Party Diaries series that will be out this fall. Ruths is based in Montreal, and her children's books feature South Asian characters on humorous and vibrant adventures. And then Jack Wong is a children's writer who was born in Hong Kong and raised in Vancouver, and now is based in Halifax. His debut picture book is When You Can Swim, which is based on his own experience as a child, trying to overcome his fear of swimming. And the last author for this particular category is Sarah Suk, who is a Korean-Canadian writer based in Vancouver. And the space between here and now is a YA novel that follows a teenage girl with the ability to time travel based on memories. So that's interesting. And when she's sent into her estranged mother's memories, she's determined to piece together what truly happened and travels to Korea in search of answers and belonging. So this definitely sounds intriguing, and this will be published this fall. Okay, in the next category, there are 6 poetry collections. Britta Bador is from Kingston, Ontario, and her debut poetry collection, Wires That Sputter. This explores themes of Black liberation, pop culture, sports, and family. D.M. Bradford is a poet, editor, and organizer based in Montreal, and their newest publication is Bottom Rail on Top. This is a hybrid poetry collection. It's focused on Black histories of antebellum life. Matthew Hollett is a writer and artist based in St. John's, Newfoundland. His newest poetry collection, Optic Nerve, challenges perception through witty poems about visions, photography, and everyday insights. The next poet is David Martin from here in Calgary. So Martin's upcoming poetry collection is called Kink Bands, and it explores Canadian landscapes and fossilized towns, and is set to be released this September. Next on the list is Emily Riddle, a Cree poet living in Alberta. Her debut poetry collection is The Big Melt, and this is part memoir, part research project, and it draws on Riddle's experience working in Indigenous governance. And last for this category is A. Light Zachary, who lives in Toronto and New Brunswick. Their debut poetry collection is called More Sure, and it is about the process of finding oneself again and again through time, experience, and community. Themes of queerness, neurodivergence, labor, love, and family are explored. So these collections sound really good, very diverse, and I am always happy to find new poets that I enjoy, so I'm sure that I will be checking out a couple of these hopefully soon. Now I have 2 short story collections from the list. First is The Whole Animal by Corina Chong. And I absolutely think this cover is amazing. I love it. Corina Chong is based in Kelowna, BC, and this is her first collection of short stories. And it examines power, strangeness, and attributes of human and animal bodies, revealing themes of loneliness, loss, and self-discovery. The other short story collection is Ezra's Ghosts. This is by Darcy Timeos from Southern Alberta. And Ezra's Ghosts is a collection of fantastical short stories with a cast of characters, it says, whose lives intersect in a quiet prairie town called Ezra. The final category is debut novels, and these are the last 7 authors on the list, starting with Nina Dunick, who is living in Scarborough, Ontario. She has previously written short stories, and her debut novel, The Clarion, is coming out in September. Thomas Hatchard is a writer born in Argentina and raised in Toronto. His debut novel, City in Flames, is a dystopian love story between a struggling grad student and an IT worker. As questions of politics, long distance, and their future loom, the story represents the isolation of human relationships. Some Hellish by Nicholas Herring. This is an author from Prince Edward Island. This is about a lobster fisher facing the existential dread of his boring, mundane life until he finds himself in the most absurd of circumstances, including a near-death experience. The novel explores the meaning of being alive. Landscapes by Vancouver-based author Christine Lay is set in our world in the near future amidst ecological disaster. A History of Burning by Toronto-based author Janica Oza. This is an intimate family saga, like those, about colonialism and migration. So this one sounds really interesting to me. Next is Newfoundland writer William Ping. It's called Hollow Bamboo, and it takes place in Newfoundland. It is a story about 2 William Pings, a millennial in the present with a realization that he needs to learn more about his Chinese heritage, and his grandfather in the past, who came to Newfoundland from China to work in a laundry in 1931. So this one sounds very interesting to me as well. And the final book on the list is The Island of Forgetting by Jasmine Seeley, who is a Barbadian-Canadian writer from Vancouver. And this novel looks beyond stereotypes, so that's a good thing. Thanks to CBC Books for putting this list together. It has all the things that I like. It's a list of books. It's can-lit. It reminds me of authors that I want to check out, and it introduces me to a whole bunch of new authors. So please let me know in the comments below if you have read any of these authors. Are there any that you are hoping to read? Are there any new and upcoming Canadian authors that you would add to this list? I would love to hear all about that. I look forward to chatting with you in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to make every day an adventure.